In 2015 and 2016, I had a unique experience to bear witness to transnational discussions about how to protect political leadership that was being targeted for assassination. One of these conversations involved people from Honduras, and one of these conversations involved people from Mexico. One thing that happened that was consistent in both of these contexts, despite the fact that they occurred with different groups of people and they occurred at different times with specific focuses that were different, was that both representatives from Honduras and from Mexico said basically the same thing. I will surmise. You are not doing us any good when you try to avoid the issue around America's consumption of drugs, even marijuana. It was very obvious, and it was almost frustrating, this presentation of feigned naivety from American activists that wanted to discuss what can we do to help you. And very quickly, the first response is you need to deal with your consumption. Now, I am somebody that in my past had a different experience with and perspective on the normalization to and potential legalization of marijuana. But for at least 5 years, and especially since I returned to the United States and I was privy to these analyses, I absolutely 100% agree. I was on the streets for 3 years, and as a woman that did not see prostitution and did not see drug dealing as a viable option for temporary resource acquisition while I was homeless, I can tell you right now that I absolutely believe one of the most crucial policy failings in this country right now is an attempt for people, regardless if they consider themselves on the left or the right or non-affiliated, to try to advocate for the legalization of hemp or marijuana under the auspices of it being about medicine. There is far too much recklessness and criminality that pervades the system we have around access to alleged medication. Everything from the research and development to the actual distribution, as well as the direct and indirect economy provided in connection with the development, production, distribution, and consumption of alleged medication. And so, if we are discussing taking something where people in other countries are literally being subjected to fatal violence, including fatal violence impacting their entire community, it is very disingenuous for us in this country to think we have an entitlement to make a political issue out of ease of access to a particular kind of drug because the benefits of its consumption delight us better than the benefits of another drug's consumption that could additionally serve our needs. We've been allowed to be deluded into believing, in the last 10 years specifically, that our primary means of organizing for our political rights necessarily have to revolve around healthcare and healthcare access. This is not only a great disservice, but it is a great crime. The crimes of what occurred with the onset, implementation, and promulgation of the Affordable Care Act have global ramifications, and this is what we're dealing with now. First, it starts with the understanding that Medicare was a specific kind of program set up as a trust to assist in a very specific manner, and among that was an understanding that people were investing their own personal intangible property and their own livelihood into something that was meant to be accessed after they were seniors, after they were of retirement age. There was no reason for us to justify making a trust for a completely different generation accessible to younger generations that did not have the same social cultural values and did not have the same kinds of contributions. I now believe that it was actually an attempt at blackmail, as well as a potential bribe to keep quiet about other crimes. In the 1980s, the federal appropriations process created a youth trust for a drug free America. I believe what happened was that certain young people, if not a very considerable number of young people, were entered into that trust. I have not been able to confirm this, but my understanding is that during a period in the 80s that correlate with the rollout of this trust, there was a significant movement in this country to bring awareness to the means by which children could be kidnapped. And there was an FBI program that had been implemented concerning fingerprint cards of children, with the understanding that parents could take their children to someplace like a local mall at a specific time, and there would be members of the FBI that would be there, or people affiliated with the FBI, that would get a fingerprint card of your child, and they would keep those fingerprints in a database from the FBI, and you would get the fingerprint card in case your child went missing, so that you could use the child's fingerprints to try to track them down. This was a very large-scale program. I specifically remember me and my sister going with my mother to the local mall to get our fingerprint cards. I believe those fingerprint cards are directly connected to that youth trust for a drug-free America. I believe that they put the livelihoods and the intellectual and intangible property of me and my sister into a federal trust since we were children and just neglected to ever tell us about it. I also believe that trust was intentionally defrauded by people who themselves were involved in drug abuse and had every intention of infiltrating the government in order to position themselves in manners that would then legalize previously illicit drug activities in order to cover up for their crimes and to pay very large-scale, high-risk kickbacks to people involved with the illicit drug economy they set deals up with. And to this day, nobody has acknowledged that. And there's an entire generation of young people that were signed up to be used as virtual or even literal drug mules of one form or another by opportunistic politicians and their friends in the corporate sector. Now, we were not supposed to know, or we were supposed to have already made the buy-in. But in the meantime, what has happened is a permissibility or an attempt for a permissibility to access the intangible and intellectual property of children to be used by adults with the understanding of, well, it happened to you. It happened to you when you were a kid, and it's horrible, but you'll do a better job than they did. I believe a lot of people in the United States, including successful people, but also potentially including people that should be more successful than that for which they're acknowledged, were either consciously or unconsciously subjected to that kind of psyop. The problem is the people performing it did not have the authority to perform it. And that brings us up to what I was discussing at the beginning here, which is the role of elected representation, as well as what does it mean to access the third branch of government if you yourself are not licensed to practice law. So far as I understand, there is nothing in the Constitution that specifically defines the judicial branch of government as being beholden to Republican representation. And if it were, there's nothing in the Constitution that says that that Republican representation requires specific kinds of securities documents, insurance, or a law degree, or even any higher education. So these are very significant questions that are actually very basic questions and that are here for us right now to engage with in the full richness of our legacy. You know, a lot of the founders of this country, among the many things they're accused of now, at the time were accused of being heretics, were accused of being terrorists. We don't talk about it, but a lot of the people we consider heroes now considered certain things crimes offensible enough to take somebody out into public, pour burning tar on them, and leave them to die after they were put under burning tar. I don't believe in that personally. I also don't believe in strategically breaking people's ankles as a way to avoid paying the tax on executive compensation or to teach a rival executive a lesson about your accessibility to his daughter. But some people do, and they have for a while. And that's actually what this campaign is about. It exists. You exist. And I acknowledge you, all of you. Thank you, and have a good day.